Hello friends, this is Hedda. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to my last video of 2021. I'm so excited to share my bullet journal setup for January with you guys, but before we get started, make sure you click the like button and subscribe to my channel so that you can follow my content into the new year. Since I'm spending some time in Utah at the moment, I really wanted to do a desert theme for January. I've done a Norwegian West Coast landscape theme before in August 2020, but never a desert theme, so that's how I want to start the new year. Quite an untraditional January theme probably, especially since my desert has no snow, but I really like how it turned out and I think the colors I picked out look really nice together as well. When I showed Jordan my setup, he said he thinks it looks like I wrote laundry instead of January, which is unfortunate, but considering I wrote it the same way for all of my spreads, I just have to run with it. Let me know in the comments what you think it looks like. In my 2022 bullet journal setup video, you saw me draw a little self-portrait, and I think the girl I drew on the cover page here also looks a bit like me, so another self-portrait, I guess. It's just easier drawing myself for some reason. I used Tombow mono Fineliners in the sizes 01, 03, and 05, and I used the thicker one for the outer borders, the 03 one for the girl, and then I used the 01 for the desert landscape behind her. I did it this way because I wanted the girl to get more attention since I wasn't going to color her in, and then I wanted the colors to kind of speak for themselves in the desert landscape. I think it's super helpful to make use of different sized fine liners when making art because a different thickness of a line can really make certain parts of an art piece stand out. I only have these 3 fine liners at the moment since I didn't bring any fine liners with me from Norway, but if I had some more I would definitely make use of the even thinner ones, the 005 or 003. Those are my favorite sizes. If I were to give my cover page a title, it would be Dreaming of the Desert because I think the bubbly dynamic border makes it look a bit like the desert is inside of a bubble in the girl's head. Does that make any sense? That's what I wanted to convey at least. The quote I chose to adorn my cover page with says, "This is the sense of the desert hills, that there is room enough and time enough," by Mary Hunter Austin, who was born in 1868 and spent a lot of time in the southwest deserts of the US. I don't know that much about her, but supposedly she was an early feminist and defended Native American and Spanish American rights during her lifetime. The state of Utah is the home of several First Nation peoples like the Utes, the Dine or the Navajo, Shoshone, Paiute, and Goshute. I don't think anyone knows the desert landscape of Utah as well as them. And while doing some research on these First Nations while preparing for this video, I came across some super talented Native American artists, which I will link in the description box for you to check out. As a Norwegian, I didn't grow up learning much about Native Americans other than what I saw in American movies, which was usually a pretty unfair depiction of Native Americans, I would say. Many people don't know this, but Scandinavia has its own native people called the Sami, and they have experienced and continue to experience very similar struggles as Native Americans throughout the years. Interestingly enough, I learned a lot about Sami people while I was studying in the US. Through lectures and seminars about indigenous peoples and cultures, it gave me a renewed interest in learning more about Sami culture. I guess my education in Norway didn't really teach me much about Sami culture either, which is part of the problem. Anyway, this could easily turn into a very different video, so I'll get back to the art, but I just wanted to acknowledge that I am currently on land that has been loved and used by First Nation peoples for thousands of years before it became what it is today. I went for a variety of beige and green colors for this setup, and I used Tombow dual brush pens and Archer and Olive calligraphs. I used the peach calligraph from the jewel section, and as for the Tombow dual brush pens, I will put the numbers of the colors that I used in the description box. Out of this entire setup, I think the purple I used for the sky might be the most controversial topic. I went back and forth between using purple and not, but in the end I decided to just go for it and try it. Somehow I didn't film all of the purple coloring, probably because I was concentrating so hard on the choice of purple or no purple that I forgot to hit record. Anyway, I really like how the cover page turned out, even if my January looks like laundry. Next up is my calendar spread, and here I wanted it to look like the calendar and tasks list is kind of sitting upright in between dunes of dirt and sand in the desert landscape. So I made sure to draw some cacti and dunes at the bottom before drawing the border of the calendar and tasks list coming up from that. I hope that my explanation makes sense. I'm not very good at explaining these things, but luckily you can watch me do it while I talk about it. For January, I went with a Ryder Carroll style calendar rather than a traditional calendar. I think it was just easier for me to make it fit the theme this time around, and I did like using it in November, so I thought I'd do it again for January. Speaking of Ryder Carroll, I'm actually an ambassador for the official bullet journal now, so I do have a new affiliate link added to the description box in case you want to check out their website, and you can get 10% off your order with my code HEDA10. In case you didn't know, the bullet journal system and name was invented by Ryder Carroll, and he and his team do lots of educational events and stuff like that over on their Bujo U, a forum dedicated to learning the bujo system and connecting with other people who use it. Back to the spread though, you can see I actually used a little bit of washi tape in the spread. I had originally decided to use just pens and markers for this setup, but then I really wanted to make use of this terrazzo washi tape from Macy Lane Co., which I haven't had a chance to use in my journals yet. I thought it fit the theme perfectly. I also used washi tape around the spread so that when I color in the sky and the ground, it won't go all the way to the edge, and there will be a crisp white line around the whole spread framing it. This is very common to do when painting with watercolors, for example, but it works just as well when using markers, and I think it was kind of necessary for the spread to make sure it didn't feel too overwhelming because there is a lot of color happening in the spread. I think the purple looked really nice on this page, and I'm so happy I was brave enough to do it because mixing purple and green just doesn't come naturally to me, but here we are. And the result turned out quite nice. My patrons are always encouraging me to use more colors, and I tried to keep that in mind. If you haven't already checked it out, I have a Patreon page and I make printable stickers and journaling kits for Patreon every month. So depending on the tier you want to subscribe to, there's lots of printables available there. And another great thing is that you can cancel your pledge whenever you want, so you don't have to commit to more than 1 month if you don't want to. My top tier patrons also get physical mail every month, which is a fun part of Patreon for me. This month I have made a little hand lettering practice sheet. I've made a mood board with pictures from Unsplash. I've made a printable sticker sheet with a desert theme, and I've made a journaling kit with lots of ephemera and labels and boxes and stickers that also fit this theme. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. Anyway, I don't know if you can tell, but in the tasks list, the left section is 1 square larger than the right, and this was not intentional. I just messed up the counting or just didn't mark it correctly when I sketched it. I'm not sure what happened. It's not a huge deal though, I will survive, but it does prove that everyone makes mistakes and no journal is perfect. I just want you guys to know that. I marked each weekend in my calendar with a Tombow dual brush pen so that I can more easily visualize the month. It's definitely harder to visualize the weeks of the month when it's not laid out like a grid, but it does help to kind of split the weeks apart this way, so I like doing this. This next spread contains some more things that I like to include in my monthly setups. That is a monthly playlist and a habit tracker. My habit tracker for January only contains 4 habits that I want to focus on for the month. I find that it's easier and better for me to focus on 4 simple habits every month instead of trying to track lots of different things. Somehow me not using a lot of trackers and not finding a use for lots of trackers and talking about that have triggered some people in the comments. So I just want to remind you all that your journal doesn't have to include anything in particular, only the stuff that you feel like you need. It's your journal, not anyone else's, and there's no one size fits all. For me, it doesn't work to track lots of things. I will just forget to fill it in, or I will fill it in but then not really feeling like tracking those things give me anything, if you know what I mean. So I am doing it this way, only tracking a few habits, keeping it simple. I got an Apple Watch as an early Christmas present from my partner and his family, so I'm able to better track my physical activity this way. and thinking of dedicating at least one of the habits to that. This spread looks quite different from the previous two because I am not drawing a desert landscape in the background. When I think of the desert, I also think of wind chimes, hanging plants, air plants, and just generally things hanging from the ceiling, in windows, and from beams. So for this spread, I tried to make it look like everything is hanging from the top of the spread. Here too, I drew the boxes with the 03 Fineliner, the headers with the 05 Fineliner, and then I drew most of the decor with the 01 Fineliner. And again, I'm using the different thicknesses to draw attention to what I consider the most important parts of the spread. I am also including my playlist for January in the spread, and this isn't really new for me, but the way I've split the spread is a bit different. Usually I do one thing on the left page and another thing on the right page, but this time I've split the spread horizontally instead, so I have the habit tracker on top and then the playlist at the bottom. For the playlist, I am drawing some Polaroid shaped rectangles, and I'll write each song at the bottom of the Polaroid picture. The spread won't have a desert landscape in the background since I felt like that would be too much of everything, but instead I'm drawing the little landscapes in the Polaroid pictures, and it took a bit of extra time, but I think the end result is really nice. At first I wasn't sure how I'd be able to incorporate the purple into the spread, but as soon as the idea of the Polaroid pictures hit me, I was like, yes, nailed it. Also, there are some succulents that are kind of purple, so I'm not completely off the mark with the purple, I don't think. Although there's a lot going on in the spread, I don't think that the end result is too busy or too complicated. I think the playlist is super fun and decorative, and there's enough room to write both the title of the song and the names of the artists. In the habit tracker, there's a bit of room above each calendar for me to write down the habit that I'm tracking, and then I'll just cross out the days I do that habit. In the past, I've usually made a blank calendar that I fill in for the habit tracker, but this time I decided to actually write down each day. Change is good, and variety keeps life interesting, you know? The spread is definitely different from the previous two, but I still think it fits the theme quite well. If you use habit trackers in your own journal, let me know how many habits you like to track every month, and if you like to focus on a few important things or many less important things. And if you have any song recommendations for me, I'd love to hear them because I love checking out new music. And I will have to fill this January playlist with something, right? Moving on to the last spread of this video, which is the first weekly spread for January. I normally don't include my weekly spreads in my monthly plan with me videos, but I thought I'd do it this once because this particular layout is one that I've been really loving lately. I've made the same layout both for weeks in November and December, and now also in January because I think it looks really nice. I also think it worked really well with the theme, with the sky in the top left corner and then lots of mountains and cacti in the bottom right corner. There's one box for each day of the week, starting on Monday, January 3rd. The 1st and 2nd of January is actually in my previous journal, since most of that week is in December anyway. I wanted to incorporate more green here, so I drew a circle at the top of each box, colored it green, and then I wrote the dates in there. This way the dates are what your eyes are drawn towards when you look at the spread. I do different layouts for each week because if I do the same layout every week, the weeks tend to blend together for me. I don't really have a traditional work week since I have my own business, and I often find myself working weekends and then maybe taking a day off in the middle of the week or just a day when it's more convenient to take time off. So if I make all my weekly spreads exactly the same, it feels like the week is a month long. This is just something that I do to help me stay on top of things and to stay motivated. And some people might like to have the same layout every week for the consistency and the convenience. It's also easier to set up if you have to only do the same layout every week instead of coming up with something new every single week. So I totally get that for those who like to do that. One thing that I did do a little bit differently on the spread was the sky. Instead of coloring the entire sky purple, I reversed it and only colored the clouds instead. I just thought that this spread would look too busy if most of it was purple, so I made the purple an accent color instead. I think this is exactly the kind of variety a theme needs to not get boring when you look at it every day for a month. At least I open my bullet journal almost every day. I know that not everyone does that, but this is literally my brain. It definitely keeps me motivated to use my journal when I like how my weekly spreads look. So that's why I try to put in a lot of effort to make my weekly spreads look nice and fit the theme, just for my own motivation's sake. The very last thing that I did before I called it good was to add some details to the cacti on all of the spreads because they were looking a bit too soft and fluffy. Cacti are absolutely beautiful, but they're also so painful to touch. So I used my thinnest fine liner to draw some short lines here and there to symbolize the spikes. And that's all the spreads I wanted to show you today. Here comes a little flip through of all of the spreads so you can get a closer look. I'll be setting up my weekly spreads throughout January like I normally do, and I'll be posting pictures of them over on my Instagram, so if you don't follow me there, I recommend checking out my account. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. Please leave a cactus emoji in your comment if you want to let me know that you watched the whole thing. And thank you again to all of my patrons on Patreon who lets me be creative and challenges me to try new things. I'll leave a link to my Patreon page in the description box if you'd like to see what's going on there. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for following me through the year of 2021. I hope to create even better and even more content in 2022, and I hope that you'll be here to see it. I appreciate you all so much. I hope that you're all having a lovely day, and I'll see you next year. Bye!